The last few weeks feels like a few years. It's been a bit of a blur. One, two, three.
Coming up on the podcast, we are speaking to two executives of some of the leading biological biostimulant companies about what's happening in the fertilizer market right now and how biologicals play into that. The Modern Acre is presented by Ambrook. Ambrook's mission is to build a more prosperous and resilient future for America's family-run businesses. They are starting with accounting tools to help businesses manage finances, improve margins, and stay independent. If you haven't already, be sure to check out Ambrook at ambrook.com or hit the link in our show notes.
All right, Ty, I teased it out on LinkedIn, I think like a week or so ago, but we actually we were in stealth mode and rebranded Aglist kind of quietly a few weeks back. So let's get into it.
Love a good stealth rebrand,
So us.
A rebrand is like merch for us. Like if you're not rebranding every 1 to 2 years, if you're not doing a merch drop every 1 to 2 years, it's like, are you even a content creator?
Yeah, constantly trying to reinvent ourselves. I feel like we have all these things going on, and then you'll just like send me like a logo idea and be like, yeah, let's dive into this for the next 2 hours and just go on a boondoggle.
Yeah, we're super excited. We're a year and a few months into Aglist, have some of the leading biological companies on the platform, farmers endorsing products. I think we have multiple products with a dozen plus endorsements, which is just super cool to see the engagement on the platform to really be this discoverability platform and endorsement platform for biologicals. And we decided, hey, it needed a little facelift. We launched with, I think, very minimal brand effort and relaunched with, I think, what is some of the coolest branding out there. So really proud of what we put together. You got to check it out. Peruse the website at your leisure. It's aglist.com. You can search for biologicals, and while you do, you can see all of the pretty artwork and design of the fresh website. All right, Tim. On that note, two of our partnering companies at Aglist are Kula Bio and Pivot Bio. And we are excited to bring executives from both these companies on in kind of a 2-for-1 podcast episode where we interview each of them, really getting in their own words, what's happening with fertilizer right now, Tim. We're seeing it on the news. We're seeing it on LinkedIn. It's a little overwhelming. We know this is impacting agriculture. It's impacting farmers. Like, let's actually talk to some of the people on the front lines that understand what's going on. And so we brought on Chris Abbott, the CEO of Pivot Bio, who we're going to start with. And then after Chris, we're going to bring on Geraldo Mattioli, the Chief Commercial Officer at Kula Bio. And it was great just to hear from their perspective, in their own words, what's happening, what's the impact on agriculture, what's the impact on farmers, and how are they developing solutions to help address those challenges. So we'll jump in to start with Chris of Pivot Bio. Chris, good to see you. It's good to have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's good to see you again. It's been almost probably 2 years.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years, and we caught up at World Agritech in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and we're like, we got to get you back on the pod, and there's been so much happening in the markets with trade and fertilizer, and you've been pretty vocal about how Pivot Bio is uniquely positioned in this market. So maybe just talk to us about kind of the last few weeks and what's happening in the fertilizer markets.
Yeah. The last few weeks feels like a few years. It's been a bit of a blur. I think, and certainly the folks that, in this orbit, I think have felt the pain, right? We started talking about what could happen 4, 5, 6 weeks ago when this whole thing started, I guess 7 weeks ago now. The good and the bad is it played out as one might expect, meaning the commodity forces worked how they should. And I don't know that that's a good or a bad thing. What happened, right? I don't think we have to replow old ground necessarily, but the spark notes of everybody at this point now seems to care about ag and cares about fertilizer again. For as we kind of say, fertilizer is cool again, to try to figure out how we navigate this. And I don't say that too tongue in cheek, just given what farmers go through, but it does matter, and we care about it as an industry, but oftentimes the general consumer doesn't. Well, it starts to show up in the Wall Street Journal, and there's good awareness around what we can do for farmers. prices went up, right? I don't know where we're at now, depending where people are in the country, but let's say that you're somewhere between 800 to $1,000 a ton on urea, depending on where you're at in the country. So you're up 100%. You're 450 a ton late February, so you're up 100% in the U.S. The U.S. they claim is trading about $100 a ton cheaper than the rest of the world. There's some truth to that. I think that's a broad brushstroke picture for a very, very dynamic commodity market. But it's painful. It's painful on urea. It's painful as folks have come to know. Half of sulfur goes through the strait. So that impacts certainly the phosphate market. And so it's just been a tough slog. And so when we look at it, you kind of have to look at the story in two chapters. You have the 26 year. What's the impact to farmers? Well, what we saw is, if broad brushstrokes here, half of fertilizer was bought prior to the war. We think that's probably right, plus or minus maybe 10%. As we think about, I'm thinking about it more from a commodity crop, a row crop perspective. That last half is painful. That pressures intense margin. Now, to be fair, a lot of the incentive dollars, the government dollars, started to flow kind of plus or minus around the same time, right? They came here in late Q1, early Q2 from a calendar perspective. So it kind of buoyed farmer profitability from a blip in the radar, one-time perspective with the government payments, the assistance programs. And so because of that, you can weather the storm. The thing we kept saying is, well, what happens if this persists in 27, where we're technically 0% bought as a farmer community, and you'll feel that higher floor in price for longer. And that's where you get into a challenge, especially if grain price doesn't go up. And that's the position we're in right now. And so as we move into July, right, the start of where prices are announced for 27 and the summer fill program begins here, obviously South America starts to buy as they think about their spring crop, our fall. It creates more floor, right? It creates buying pressure in the nutrition market. And so that's what we're watching really closely, because absent another grower assistance payment or subsidies from the government, you're going to compress that farmer profitability. Or we track very specifically the ratio between grain price and nitrogen is going to compress even more, because you have less of pre-bought nitrogen that created a little bit of spread in 26. And so it's just a really tough time for commodity row crop growers in the U.S. And this is on the back of 3 years of tough margin pressure. So 27 is something we're thinking really hard, and why we made some of these decisions here late in 26 that I'm sure we'll talk about that set us up to serve our growers in the face of what could be, if not a tough year, at least a volatile year.
Yeah, that's where we want to go next. I think you painted a really good picture of where things stand, what's happening in the market. So thank you for that overview. So now let's get into Pivot Bio. Like, how do you guys fit into this, and how are you helping kind of address some of these challenges for growers with your solution?
Yeah, so number one, our focus obviously is nitrogen, right? What we do is we would be the market leader around gene editing microbes that fix nitrogen. So as I say, think about them as another source of nitrogen. Whether you have synthetic nitrogen, you might have manure, think about gene edited end fixers that way. They don't know anything else. All they know, those microbes, is to fix nitrogen. So our business has typically been the liquid and furrow product, so applied right at planting in the furrow, making contact with that seed as it goes into the soil. The seed treatment, which was a great product, is a great product for us. That was by far and away majority of revenue. Just treating seed just like we do with chemistry and in other crops, and so that's very seamless for a farmer. They're just planting the same seed, and it's fixing nitrogen. And then this year, what we launched, and this is actually good as it relates to some of the commodity supply chain disruption, we launched our dry formulation. So we had spent 3 years, we hadn't talked about it very much, but almost 3 years optimizing the formulation of dry, because we observed a grower, if not need, interest in the dry formulations, right? Just like they're applying talc and graphite and other dry products or fluency agents, they had a need or a desire to use new formulations. But we weren't satisfied with what the market was delivering from a coverage perspective. At least not if you're going to be a source of nitrogen, you can't leave it to chance. And so we held ourselves accountable to did that dry formulation actually meet the same count that we actually do CFU count, number of live microbes on seed. it's got to meet seed treatment if we were going to launch it. And so we got to that point this year and launched it. So now we have all three. And that's powerful because it allows us to respond in real time. Whether you're liquid in furrow or you have your channel, your seed dealer or your retailer treating seed, or maybe your walk-up business, as we would call it. You didn't buy your nitrogen, but you need it on the fly, and you're going to be planting tomorrow. And we have some gross, because we can ship anywhere in 24 hours in the U.S. for our customers. You need it quickly, and the dry gives you that nimbleness. So that gives us sort of flexibility in operationalizing this technology. On the other hand, what we did very quickly as a response specifically to the war and the invasion in Iran is that following Tuesday, we lowered price. So our view is, as a business where we ferment these products, produce them through fermentation, and then deliver them very nimbly to the customer, we're completely dislocated. We don't have global supply chains in that way. We aren't subject to natural gas or water restrictions or shipping challenges. I think I told you guys last time, your iPhone's 120 acres of the microbe when we're shipping it in dust form. So how fast can I ship 10 microbes to get 1,200 acres? 10 iPhones, super fast, 10 packs. And so we took price down to prove we're dislocated. That brought us, at the time, about 40 or 50% cheaper than synthetic. Today, it's about 65% cheaper because synthetic has continued to lift up. And then what we did, you guys, is 2 weeks later, we came out and said, not only can you get it at that discount, but we'll guarantee it and lock that price on no matter the formulation you buy from us for 3 years to help take the volatility out. And it's going to show up for farmers in one of two ways to deliver value. Either that price they're going to love. Even if fertilizer collapses 50%, we're still going to be cheaper. So they're still going to improve their bottom line, but it also allows them to turn the heat down on that volatility because they're not losing sleep in the same way. They know that they've locked in 25% of their nitrogen budget at a stable, much lower price. And so it allows them to move on to the next topic that they're trying to manage for their operation.
Yeah, it just seems like this period is, like, albeit painful for the farming community, like a good kind of forcing function for biological adoption. And like, there's just something so cool about kind of this domestic supply chain and story that you can tell of, like, we're making these products in the US to serve US growers is a very cool story versus being like reliant on these external supply chains that are totally out of your control. So maybe, yeah, just talk to us about kind of like the farmer mentality here, where like historically a pivot grower, maybe they're using some synthetics, supplementing with pivot bio. Like, how are you seeing them kind of increase their ratio using your products to supplement the synthetics?
Yeah, I would say it's a great question, Tim, and it's something we've been pretty loud about in the market that we learned the hard way, right? We used to tell folks, hey, this is about 40 pounds equivalent of synthetic nitrogen, so take off 40 pounds. It wasn't specific to anhydrous ammonia or urea or in-season side dress. Well, anyone who's lived in fertilizer is like, well, anhydrous doesn't work the way the same as my side dress does. There's different efficiency there. My soil type is different. Why do those things matter? Because our performance, unfortunately, is driven also by the volatility of synthetic. If you lose a ton of synthetic, it's going to impact the grower's bottom line, no matter what, even if you also use pivot. And so we wanted to be very specific and think more broadly than just our product and say, what's your total nitrogen program? And even more so, what's your total nutrition program? You know, you're in a drought area, how are you thinking about potassium? Do you have your nitrogen to sulfur ratio in balance? We've learned in 3 years, our average grower has probably gone from 12-1 nitrogen to sulfur to 6-1. Huge impact on yield gain. You got to take these nutrients up in balance. So we don't want to just force feed it nitrogen. And so we had to learn that the hard way. How do we really position the product for success, understanding the grower's broader program and their yield outcomes? And what we've seen, we published this on our website. When we launched our third generation corn product and our first generation cotton and sorghum products this year, we said, we're not just going to go the typical way of university partners at, or CROs at these ag input companies have done, legacy wise. We said, look, we have thousands of customers. Let's give it to them. Let them use it how they would use it against their typical grower standard practice. And we'll publish the data, assuming they don't kill it or something catastrophic doesn't happen, but like generally follow the rules and use the product. Let's publish it, win, loss, or tie. And frankly, the losses, you learn a lot more than the wins. We have some people that say, I'm trying to apply like 40 to 80 pounds of N. Okay, it's probably too little. But we want to try it. And so it's really about keeping the growers ultimate use of the product to deliver value in mind, because some folks are trying to save a ton of money on fertilizer this year. In another year, it might be, you know what, I got sandy soil and I'm in Arkansas, or I got sandy soil on an irrigated field in Nebraska, and I just know I'm losing a lot of nutrients because I'm just pushing them through that soil. And I don't want something that I'm going to lose. I don't want it to leach. So I use the pivot product in a different way. And we had to learn that the hard way, that there's no silver bullet on how people use nutrition, just like there's no silver bullet on how they pick and plant seed, and there's no silver bullet on, their nitrogen budget alone. So it's something that we had to learn, and and we can be flexible. You layer in some of these programs we've been able to do. We kind of joke around like, God, it's nice that we're a privately held company where employees own 25%, and we got great world-class institutional shareholders, because it allows us to be nimble. Right? We don't have to go get an earnings call here in 90 days and defend why we did this for a farmer because a shareholder thinks it's a bad idea. We just went and said, look, this is the best thing we can do for farmers. Yeah, could we take price up because the war drove up nitrogen? Sure, but we're not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to do it. And so, having that mentality and sort of live into our word, as we say, like, especially as a growth company, you better put your money where your mouth is. And, the stuff that we're going to do for our farmers on our product side, also through what we have launched last summer called the Pivot Institute, bringing more resources, has nothing to do with selling our products to our farmers and helping rural communities, is something that's really important to us. So being private with the group we have as shareholders, and, the biggest slug being employees, we get to make those decisions in sort of with more freedom than maybe if we were public or had a different setup.
No, it's super cool, and kudos to you guys for making those decisions, albeit hard. I think an opportunity, obviously, but obviously putting the farmer first is really cool to see you do that. Chris, this has been great to get an update from you. As we wrap, how can listeners get in touch, and kind of any other things we missed that you'd like to share?
No, yeah. Number one, great to see you guys again, and thanks for having me. Absolutely, get in touch with us. You can track us through social media, LinkedIn, whatever. I mean, people reach us all over. You can go to our website if it's a farmer. We absolutely can put you in touch with either local distribution partners or our own internal. We have probably 100 agronomists at this point on our team. We really want to help folks do it the right way. And so please reach out. If you just need us as a resource, you don't have to buy our product. At this point, no one's buying product from us for 26 anyways. It feels like everybody's thinking about 27. Use us as a resource. We want to bring as much learnings as we can to customers. Only other thing I'd say, sort of a little bit of a watch out here at the end, is as I was just alluding to earlier, we've got this Pivot Institute, and we've got some super exciting announcements coming in May and June, right around the 250th birthday of the country and prior to the 27 season. Again, just doubling down on this, what else can we do for the farmer question? And they're not related to our products. So it's not, another good product or a formulation. This is focused on rural health, farmer mental health, farmer viability, financial planning and generational planning for farmers. These are the things we're investing quite a bit of our dollars in, because we know we can spread that investment over thousands of customers. In the end, it's actually a pretty cheap cost per customer analysis when you do it. But, our customers all face a lot of challenges. And so we feel like now's the time to sort of make that investment when maybe some people wouldn't be in a tough economy like this, sort of use this volatility as a force for good. Hopefully being more of the eternal optimist here. What else can we do for farmers? So we're working hard to do that.
Hope you all enjoyed hearing from Chris about how Pivot Bio is helping to address the current dynamics in the fertilizer market. Now let's jump to Geraldo with Kula Bio to talk about their approach. Hey, Geraldo, welcome to the show.
Hi, team. Hey, Tyler. Good to be here with you. Thank you.
We're excited to chat with you. Proud to be a partner with Kula on AgList, and love what you guys are up to. Geraldo, I think a lot is happening right now in agriculture. And specifically globally, what's happening with Iran, the macro environment we find ourselves in. And a lot of that is impacting agriculture and specifically the fertilizer market. So we'd love to just hear from you, kind of your take on where we're at with kind of globally and how that impacts kind of the fertilizer and ag market.
Sure, and I'll be happy to share some thoughts. Definitely, fertilizer in general is a globally traded commodity, so it is exposed by nature with events that affect trade flows and economics. So it's not the first time we see shifts that like this in the market, but this latest one is definitely impacting farmers as they start to prepare and actually plant the crop now in the springtime. So it's definitely a big challenge for the farmers. We've seen a shock not too long ago about the Russian war in Ukraine, and now this last one is definitely another episode of that volatility that sometimes is really hurting the farmers at the end with the price of the fertilizer they have to use.
When a lot of these trade disruptions happen, there's, every news story is talking about the cost going up, and how far delayed are those impacts actually seen on farm? Like a lot of stuff is happening, in advance, where a lot of the big retailers, the Nutrients, the Siplants, the Wilbur Ellis's, like they're theoretically loading up for their customers for the spring planting season. They're not doing this week. They've done this in advance. So how far in the future will we actually see the impacts here?
Like always, when you have a situation like this, there's a pipeline, there's a lag in the response that you see. So even though the price of the traded commodity goes up quite quickly in a situation like this, I don't think the farmer has seen the full impact yet. Like you said, there's a purchase that was done before, even from the farmer or from the channels, the dealers, beforehand, few season kind of programs. So I don't think the farmer has seen the full price yet increase. But I think it's going to come, because right now there's only so much you can hold if you're a channel, if you're a distributor. First, you may not be able to give your inventory that you bought at low cost straight to the farmers at the same base. So it's a competition point there as well. But I do believe that the farmers are going to be seeing higher price for a little while before this normalize again. That's my impression.
So what's your perspective on what growers should be doing to kind of mitigate this risk and this cost? I think there's more and more options for growers when we think about fertility. Like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Of course, these questions, they become even more relevant when you have a crisis like this. I mean, those are things you should be thinking about and doing all along. But when you have a situation that is this acute, of course, people try to overreact. But I think if you look from just the traditional fertilizer point of view, what I always used to recommend is that you layer your purchase, that you don't leave it for last minute, that you don't try to time the market, because you won't get it right anyways. So if you have a large purchase, if you're a large user of fertilizer, as a channel or as a farmer, you should try to not time the market and just buy small pieces so you get up and down movements as well. But of course, if you look at in terms of technology, in terms of what can be done to optimize what you buy today, definitely quite a bit in terms of nutrient use efficiency that people are more and more focused on. So how can I make the best of what I buy, if it's a conventional fertilizer? But also I'm on the biological side now, and I see more and more farmers and channels open to alternatives, to innovation that can bring them an extra source that is probably not as dependent on global trades and conventional energy sources as they're used to. So I think it's a good time for people to be open and definitely take a look at other things that they can put in their toolbox to not be so exposed in the future, because another crisis is going to come. This one's going to be resolved, hopefully soon. But there's another one's going to come. Who knows about what's going to be the topic, but that's the nature of the global markets that we're exposed to. So it's good to prepare in advance and have options when the time comes, right?
Have you seen your customer base kind of react to what's happening in these markets and really increase orders or shift their plans for the spring planting with Kula's products?
Yes, we've seen a positive reaction. We're still in the early days of commercialization. We don't have 10 years of track record, but it's progressing as planned. But we do see channels and farmers more open to talk about it, to discuss, to look for alternatives. So definitely it's expediting, in our case, it's expediting our go-to-market and our acceptance, at a different pace than we probably were even expecting, quite honestly.
And tell us just a little bit more about how do you, Kula Bio, specifically address this? Tell us a little bit more about your product, how it works, and how it supports this challenge right now.
Yeah, so we've been really focused on the markets where we have some physical presence today. So mostly in the high value crop segment. And of course, if you talk about high value crop, you need to talk Florida, Georgia, California, Arizona. That's where we are for now, at least. That's where we started our commercialization a few years ago. So in those cases, what we've been trying to do is definitely put some programs in place for channels in this case and farmers that are a little bit more competitive, that can put them in a position where they can increase their purchase of biologicals, nitrogen, like in our case, and be in a competitive position versus conventional fertilizers. But also, as they do that, they open up and they expose themselves for other benefits that are typical to the biologicals in terms of sustainability and soil health. Those are add-ons that we are also seeing some positive reaction to.
Talk to us about your supply chain a little bit. You mentioned kind of conventional fertilizers, this global trade where inputs are being sourced all around the world and really impacted by trade disruptions that happen. Like, is there something to be said for kind of a local domesticated supply chain for biologicals?
No, absolutely. It's a good point. We in our case, we have our productions in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, and it's a biological activity reaction. So we are not exposed to energy. We're not exposed to the high, trade flows. So basically, we can definitely control our cost of production in a much simpler, better way than if you're exposed to energy flows. So yes, we have a local production. We can react quite quickly in terms of increased demand, and that's what we've been trying to do here for the last couple of months now. The impact on the farmer is definitely high right now, so it's a lot of stress, and of course the farmers they're pushed on one side from the high cost of the inputs. On the flip side, in many cases, their crops are not rewarding them the way it should. Look at tomatoes, there's row crops the same, so it's a really difficult situation right now for the short term for the farmers. At the same time, the American farmer is resilient. It's they've been through crisis before, and every time something like this happens, what I see is the ability to innovate and to adapt, and that's what we're trying to be part of that option for the farmers as well. So very happy to be here with you guys and appreciate the time and the efforts and helping us move the farmers towards sustainability and innovation that at the end would be positive for them as well.
Hope you guys enjoyed those perspectives from Geraldo and from Chris. I think that was a great format. And, a little sneak peek for those listening at, minute 30 of this podcast. Tim and I are doing some brainstorming around new formats, hint, hint. So we be on the lookout for how the Modern Acre, we're 8 years into this thing, how we kind of reinvent ourselves. So we're exploring some new formats coming soon to your feed. And be sure you check out the new branding at aglist.com. Got to check out the sweet logo, the sweet branding, the sweet images. And while you're there, check out Kula Bio and Pivot Bio and their products. So we'll link how you can find their profiles in the show notes as well. You can go directly and check out the products from both these great companies. Appreciate you guys listening.